and welcome to Piano Teaching Success Q&A. I'm Gillian Erskine, and together with my colleague Paul Myatt, we've created this program for piano teachers around the world to inspire you, uplift you, and make your job that little bit easier as we explore our passion for teaching piano. Well, this episode is the last in our 4-part series on teaching children with learning difficulties, and today we're going to focus in on dyslexia. Now, whilst most think that people with dyslexia cannot read, that's not always the case. I've discovered dyslexia has a broad range of characteristics that can make our job of teaching piano a little bit challenging at times. One of these telltale signs that really rang a bell with me was the gap. And that's when an apparently bright student who evidently seems to understand everything we are doing, they're keen, they seem interested, and yet this doesn't really reflect in their work and what they can do. Remembering also seems to be a key problem for children with dyslexia, and I can see how easy it is for us to fall into the trap of thinking either they're not interested, or they're not interested enough to remember, or they don't practice enough. And yet that may not be the problem at all. Well, the good news is there are so many things we can do to help them remember, and we've made a special download especially for you called 37 Common Traits of Dyslexia, and we've also put in our 7 top piano teaching tips for dyslexia. As you can see from these headings, traits are quite spread over a number of areas, not just reading. I'm sure you're going to find this really interesting. You'll find a link to this in our download in our show notes, and you can download your copy from there. Well, today's guest is the gorgeous Anastasia Cunningham, a piano teacher and mum of 2 beautiful daughters. All 3 of them have dyslexia, and you may be surprised to know they're all good readers. Anastasia's story is delightful and insightful. I know you're going to enjoy meeting her as she shares her journey through life and the systems she puts in place for herself and her girls to achieve extraordinary things. This is just an absolutely fascinating story. Can you tell us how your story started? Because let's start with you.
Okay, so my background, I was an analytical chemist, worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 12 years, had a master's in analytical chemistry, and then I had children and took a career break and kind of never went back and fell into teaching music, which has always been something I've been involved in, but obviously not the teaching. My younger daughter, I've got 2 daughters who are now 21 and 18. And my younger daughter, when she was 2, started at a local Kadai-based music school. And obviously I went along as a parent. And it was just transformational to me. Wonderful way of learning. And they advertised saying anyone who's interested in finding out more and doing some training through us, let us know. So I thought, this is me, this is great. So that's what I did. So I trained through the music school. I taught there for 12 years. The last few years I was there, I started building up my piano teaching practice. And then about 4 years ago, I think it was, I left the music school and now I just teach piano from home. So, yeah. But in terms of what we're talking about, so dyslexia, I've never been diagnosed dyslexic, but I've kind of always known that I am. Yeah. When I was little, my reading was always excellent. I was an avid reader. In my family, I was considered a slow reader because it took me a couple of nights to read a book, whereas everyone else in the family would read a book in a night. So
wow.
But yeah, so I've always read. But spelling was a challenge. My primary school essays were red pen all over it, writing out 20 times to spell it correctly. I know it's not the done thing anymore, but actually it did me a lot of favours because it really improved my spelling. I still have a few words that I'm kind of never quite sure about. The other thing I tended to do was I split words in the middle when I was writing. So I would sort of hang the first half of the word onto the previous word and the second half into the new word. So you could kind of read what I wrote, but you had to know how my brain worked. And I also I couldn't follow lines. So even if there were lines on the page, I didn't write like that. I wrote like that, right down on a diagonal, which apparently is a key sign of possible dyslexia. But we're talking quite a long time ago, and it just wasn't recognised back then.
No.
So we have got it in the family. So when my daughter started showing signs of dyslexia, I was kind of on the case, and was told on more than one occasion by so-called specialists at their primary school that they couldn't possibly be dyslexic because their reading was too good. So I'm always very wary when people start saying dyslexia, that means you can't read, because actually, no, it doesn't necessarily. Some dyslexics have trouble with reading, but not all. Anyway, so we had them diagnosed, that they've both got formal diagnoses, and actually it's so much better these days because there's so much in place that can help. And I would always say to anyone, as a parent, anyone who thinks that there might be some issue like this, do get a diagnosis. So many people think, oh, I don't want to have a label.
Yes.
But that's how things were when we were little. These days, having the label actually gives you the help and support that you need, and it's so beneficial. My older daughter at 21 has just graduated. She did psychology. She got a first, so she's done fantastically. Wow. She's now going on to do a master's in clinical psychology. My younger daughter had her A-level results this week, and she's incredibly creative. She got an A star in art. She got an A in drama and a B in English Lit, and she's going to university to do creative writing. Again, one of those subjects that you would think, oh no, don't do that, you're dyslexic. And actually, she is so creative, and that's quite often the case with dyslexics. We're quite used to thinking out of the box and approaching things differently. A lot of dyslexics are really creative. So that,
probably
I
good
guess,
problem solvers as well, because you
yeah,
had to find other ways around some things.
yeah, definitely. And I think determination also helps. I was very determined as a child. Obstinate, people would have said. I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get there. So even though I had no diagnosis, none of the kind of support that happens these days, I was determined, and I did, got through my degree and my master's. Yeah, that was just me. I was never going to give up. So that helps.
Well, I think learning a musical instrument also helps you with that little bit of a determination too, doesn't it?
Definitely. So we're all musical, the three of us. I never had problems learning piano. I never had problems learning to read the music. I was 6 when I started with piano. I don't remember learning to read the music, so it clearly happened. Yeah. Just happened. Interestingly, later on, I did start trombone, and when I was sort of mid-teens and had to do tenor clef, I never really got to grips with tenor clef. I knew how to work it out, but I could never truly read it, and that's still the same. So,
yeah.
So there is a little bit of reading. I do wonder if I'd have learnt tenor clef at 6. Like I did with the piano, whether I would then be all right. But
I think that's right. Age and stage would have a lot to do with that as well, right? Because does your brain work okay at decoding stuff like that? And your brain obviously does. So I don't read clef. I mean, I didn't learn a trombone, but I don't. And it's like I'm not working it out.
Yeah.
So I get what you mean by that.
But I never had any trouble with coordination for piano, and I did play the organ for a while as well. And again, even with the 3 staves, I was fine with that. I always had trouble with coordination for sport, interestingly, but it is a different sort of coordination, I think. And then my older daughter is not a natural pianist. She did have trouble with coordination and very nearly gave up when you have to start putting hands together for scales. That was a major headache for her. But she shares my determination and was determined to get to grade 5. So she did achieve that. But she's a wonderful cellist, and that was her thing. So she did
got
cello
to
all the way
grade
through.
8 or something, didn't she, on cello?
Grade 7, yeah. She was starting to work towards grade 8, but it was coinciding with A levels, and there was too much going on, so she didn't actually do it. But she's just, yeah, she's a wonderful cellist and a wonderful performer as well. So
And your younger one also did, what, grade 5 piano or something like that as well, didn't she?
So she did up to grade 7 piano and grade 7 clarinet as well. She's an avid and amazing songwriter. And
This is your creative being.
yeah, she wants to pull the songwriting into her degree as part of her creative writing, which she is able to do where she's going. So yeah, she's very, very creative. She taught herself guitar and ukulele. She's constantly singing. So there's music going on the whole time in the house, which is lovely, actually.
Well, that's right. And, just for many people, I mean, obviously the way dyslexia has come in your family, it's perhaps not as chronic as different other people who really do have trouble with distinguishing the lines and spaces and getting that all jumbled up. But it's really interesting the way it can be so different for everyone, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my older daughter did have a few problems with visual processing. And she actually was given exercises and things to help. And she actually has bifocal glasses, which she has to wear all the time. And that really helps her because her eyes don't focus quickly enough and in the right place when she's sort of reading compared to looking up. So you don't usually think of bifocals as being, she's had them since 9 or 10. So you don't usually think of it bifocal as being something that a young person has, but it's really helped her. But yeah, so
sometimes they wear rose-coloured or they have different coloured lenses. Also help some children.
Yeah, it's very much it's different for different people. I mean, the key thing with dyslexia is that they have, or we have, an unbalanced profile. They call it. So there can be different things that they can things like processing speed is often key. So it takes everyone longer with dyslexia, it takes you longer to work things through in your head and to kind of come to a solution or whatever, or to listen to stuff and work out what was said. So the old style classroom lesson where at the beginning of the lesson the teacher spends the first 5 minutes telling everyone exactly what they need to do and then sends them off to get on with it really doesn't pay dyslexics any favours, because they just can't process it. By the time we've worked out what was happening at the beginning, they've lost the thread of the rest of it. So dyslexics can quite often come across as dreamers, and it's just because they can't keep up with the flow of things. So it's really key to give short and simple instructions. Don't say do this, then do that, then do the other, because they're not going to cope with that. So
Speaking like boys, I've got boys. You give them one instruction and you wait till they do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. So yeah, it's not necessarily going to be issues with reading. It will very likely be problems with processing speed, problems with short-term memory issues, and retaining that information. So
that's one of the surprises for me, the short-term memory issues. Alison, who is also on this show, was talking about this as, one of her major issues was this just forgetfulness. And she almost set off about the bomb scare in Harrods because she forgot her handbag in the cafeteria one time.
This is why I have everything written down.
I see there's a little bit of colour coding going on there too.
Oh yeah, have that as well. So I mean, it's interesting. My teachers always said to my parents, it literally took me till 6th form to be in the right place at the right time with the right things. I just couldn't do it. I was the most disorganised person, but we all through life
you
work
come across
out
to me as so organised. And to do that, like your degrees that you did, you had to be so organised.
It's all about coping mechanisms. Take away my lists and I would be lost. So I write everything down. And yeah, everyone who knows me now can't believe, who didn't know me when I was little, can't believe that I say, I just couldn't organise, because I'm known to be
Super
the most organised person. Yeah. But yeah, so it's about, everyone will develop coping strategies.
Yeah.
They will always be dyslexic, but they will have ways of managing that. And it's just a different way of being, really. It's
Well, it's your way of being,
yeah,
and you've got to cope with that, right?
yeah, definitely.
And what about
So
dyspraxia? Has dyspraxia been? It's not. Sounds like it's not really been a major issue. Low muscle tone with in your family necessarily.
no, my older daughter has lax ligaments, but she's not dyspraxic. So yeah, again with the fingers a bit, she was like
That's
the joints bent every which way to start with. So again, that didn't do the piano any favours to start with.
well, she did well to get to grade
But
7, didn't she?
this was my older one,
Oh,
so
the other
she
one.
was grade 5. But yeah, but she did do
Cello's a
very
bit
well.
hard, right, to get your hand around.
Yeah, she started playing cello at age 5, and yeah, she just has this most wonderful expressive way of playing, and that surmounted everything else, and the rest did follow.
You need
She's
that to
also
be a
got
cellist, I think, don't you?
she's also got the most wonderful musical ear. I mean, she's far more innately musical than I am. I've worked at it, but she never plays out of tune.
Yeah, that's
She
all that singing you did
even
with her when she was a little leak. A die.
yeah, even the I mean, she had group lessons to start with. Can you imagine 5 of them, age 5, for a 20-minute lesson playing the cello? Yeah, but she hated it because she said that, I mean, she might play wrong notes, but the others were typical, string players learning, and it was a bit kind of not quite as bad as violin because it's lower pitch, but still a bit like that. And she said, it sounds horrible, and she hated being part of a group lesson. It was much better once she was by herself. But so she's just got this wonderful. She's also a much more of a performer than I am. I'm not good at playing in front of people, but she just has the audience eating out of her hands. So she just has a wonderful sense of timing, and she just draws them in. It's lovely to watch.
And I think they're both pretty lucky to have you as a mum. You got in there
you.
early, you got that diagnosis, and you've been working with it ever since and really celebrating their gifts
Yeah,
and talents.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are a few sort of general things I would say about dyslexia and about teaching those with dyslexia based on mine and my girls' experience, but also the few that I've taught with dyslexia. So I would say, kind of building on the don't give loads of instructions, keep things simple and keep revisiting it. So dyslexics take a lot longer than others for the information to pass from the short term to the long term memory. And they may appear to have got it perfectly, and you come back the next week, and even if they've been trying to do it during the week, it'll have gone. And you really do need to overlearn it for it to become automatic.
So that's sometimes you do have those lessons where they've got it. Your next lesson they turn up, and it's like you're thinking, hang on a minute, we had this last week. What happened? And then you're thinking, oh, you didn't practice last week, and it may not be that. It just might be that they've got this thing, and it could be very mild. So therefore, not necessarily diagnosed by anybody or picked up.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say don't interpret poor memory as lack of interest.
Yeah.
So sometimes we think, oh, they're just not interested because they're not switched on. They're not picking this up. They're not interested. And, certainly from my girls, the way they were with things, it wasn't lack of interest. And they were really trying extremely hard, more so than their peers, but it just took that bit longer for them to get it.
And on that note, did you explore much in multisensory, like doing things in many different ways, and so to try to fatten out those neural pathways?
Yeah, definitely. That's on my list as well. So yeah, multisensory approach. It's good teaching anyway, but for dyslexics, it's key, absolutely key. The more you can do it, approach it in different ways. So still being consistent, the consistent approach is really important. We're, as teachers, it's very easy to say, oh, that's not working, let's try something else. Oh, that's not working, let's try something else. And that can be very confusing because they just haven't had long enough to absorb it in the way you were trying to do it to start with, and then you try and do it something else.
It's like, give me a break.
Yeah, exactly. But as long as it's consistent, doing it, approaching it from different directions, and doing games and activities, doing things where you're walking or moving around the room, using visual cues, all of those things really, really help. So yeah, definitely, it's good for everyone, particularly dyslexics. And I would also say, yeah, don't give up on the note reading. It will or may well take them longer, but it's such a key skill. They will get it. You just have to be prepared to be doing it really slowly. So yeah, I do slightly despair when I hear on Facebook and things and various groups of people saying, oh, so and so's dyslexic, they can't read the notes, and so we're just going to give up with that, we're going to do it entirely by ear. And I'm thinking, please don't. It's such a vital skill. Yeah, do stuff by ear, fantastic. Do as much creatively as you can, and encourage their creativity by singing, composing, listening skills. All of those things are really, really key, and they may have a particular aptitude for it. And it's wonderful to find something for anyone, but particularly those who have a special need, that they're really good at, because they spend so much time battling to be as good as everyone else in every other area. To find something that they can excel at is just wonderful, because you just see light bulbs go off, and the change in expression and demeanor. They often really struggle with self-esteem. My younger daughter was absolutely convinced she was, in her words, thick, and she wasn't. She's so bright, and her results speak for themselves, but it just takes her that bit longer to get there. And yeah, she's it's so hard as a parent, and as a teacher, to see people say, oh, just can't do it, I'm just not, just doesn't suit me, I'm just thick. And when you know that they have it in them, and that they are actually really intelligent or could be really good at this, they just need that bit longer. And they're constantly comparing themselves to everyone else, and it's and seeing themselves as failures. And it's so hard to get out of that trap.
Yes. And particularly if there isn't a diagnosis. Alison, who we were talking about in the show, Alison's a computer scientist, like you, highly intelligent, but that was her first degree. Now she's actually she helps children with special needs and does testing and things like that for that. She didn't know she thought she was thick, but she knew she wasn't. Because she just couldn't get things quickly, Yeah. And then she thought, no, I do think I am smart. But it wasn't until she was doing her second degree in training in how to diagnose people with special needs that they actually put her through it as a test, crash test dummy, and you went, hey, you've got dyslexia. And she went, oh, is that what it is? Almost relief, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, from my own experience, at primary school, I was always top of the class. And then I got a scholarship and went to a very good independent senior school, boarding school, and was suddenly very average to below average. I mean, within the range, but certainly nowhere near the top.
Not where you were.
No, and
that must have been hard to deal with.
It was, and I really struggled, and I put in so much work and time and effort, far more than anyone else did, and I did okay, but I didn't do the same as I had previously. And eventually, at age 16, I thought, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I know that I'm brighter than these results are suggesting.
Yes.
So I actually put myself in for the Mensa test just to see. And sure enough, it came out that I was in the top 2% or top 1%, whatever it was, sufficient to qualify for Mensa.
Okay.
And I thought, well, okay, so I've got the intelligence. It is just the way my mind processes things. One of the problems I had is, yes, as I've said previously, I'm an avid reader, good reader, but when it came to reading technical stuff, I would read a paragraph and it was gone. I couldn't retain that information. And eventually I found the only way I could keep any of it was by writing notes as I actually read. When it came to my degree, I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote all my notes and summarising them down each time. Eventually I had my whole degree notes in about two pages of A4 summarised down to that extent. Wow. My now husband was my boyfriend at the time. I used to get, he's an electronics design engineer, so he's not a chemist, but I used to get him to test me on, and he said by the end of it, he said, I know this better than you do. But it was such a struggle, and I was doing 6 to 8 hours of revision a day from the Christmas for my final exams in the summer. It was hard work, and I came out with a third, so I got my degree, but it wasn't it wasn't really what I would have hoped for.
Yeah, for the work you put in is what you deserve.
My master's was better because that was analytical chemistry, so it was applied and it was very practical, and it was all based around the things we were doing in the lab anyway. So that was much easier to learn. Again, I was doing rather than just sitting with a book learning. So it's again this multisensory approach, and that was much more my thing.
But even the act of writing was your multisensory ability to get the brain connecting to the work, actually physically writing and all that kind of stuff. People often think writing's a visual skill, and it's kind of multisensory, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Aesthetics.
And certainly my older daughter, for all of her revision for any exams, swears by mind maps. I remember her history GCSE, which is very, fact orientated. You've got to have that information there. We had wallpaper lining paper all the way round her room stuck up that she'd done all these mind maps on. It was a work of art. It really was.
It must have been.
Yeah.
Do you have any more gems and tips to share for us?
So just 2 general things, really. One is obviously read any reports. As a teacher, if you know someone has been dyslexic, ask to see the report, read it through. It will be really helpful. Those reports give you lots of, not just what the difficulties are, but suggestions of how to approach it. Really, really useful information. And finally, keep the parents in the loop. So not as easy as that if you're teaching someone in a school setting, perhaps, but certainly if you're in a private setting, whether or not the parents, whether or not you suspect dyslexia or whatever, but just generally, the parents, whether musical or not, can be so supportive. Something that does come up from time to time is, I think little Johnny's dyslexic. As a teacher, parents haven't said anything. What do I do? Yeah. I've had that once or twice. Obviously, as teachers, we're not specialists. You can't go in saying Johnny's dyslexic, or even I think Johnny's dyslexic can kind of cause real ructions. So what I've done is said, I've noticed this. So if you sort of say about the things that you're seeing that they're having difficulty with, without kind of prejudging what it might be, and then say, have they noticed anything at school, or have you noticed anything at home that kind of fits with this? And that can just be the way of getting in and opening the conversation up. So that can be quite helpful too.
And if they go, oh yeah, they might say something like that at school. Next step?
Next step, I think, would be to say, these are things that I can do to help. What have the school suggested they can do to help? And have they suggested any further steps? And then leading them down the
path.
The path, but without necessarily spelling it out. I think that their port of call should be the school rather than us as music teachers.
Well, we only see them for a short period of time. We're only dealing with one thing,
And very often this, as has happened in your family, runs in families, doesn't it? It has a line. So it could be that they don't realise anything's different or unusual because that's how they that's things that they've experienced themselves. They don't realise that that's not what most children or learners, how they experience the world.
I do think there's still a lot of stigma in parents, not in the real world today, but it's what they experience, people our age, what they experienced growing up. I look back in absolute horror to my primary school, where I did fantastically well, and it wasn't reflective of my primary school, it's just a reflection of the time. But there were a few children in my class who were taken out for extra help and support, but that's how it would be phrased now. They were the backwards children. and that was that exactly was what the teachers would say, was what everyone would say. Right. Can the backward children come out for their work now? And that there was someone special who came in to teach them and do work with them.
So they were kind of getting help, but the label really wasn't helpful.
It was awful, and I'm so pleased, but things aren't like that anymore. But the trouble is, people of our generation have those memories from when we were little, and therefore are very reluctant sometimes to actually explore what's out there to help. And it is so helpful. I mean, my daughter, who's just finished university, had so much in the way of tools that were given, laptop tools, things to record lectures, to be able to make notes alongside those recordings, all these tools and techniques that are out there now to help. But if you don't go down that route, you just don't get that support. And you fall through the gaps.
Yes, and sometimes, I know over here, children with learning difficulties will get extra time in an exam.
Yeah.
Or those sorts of things that can be helpful for them.
Yeah, both of my daughters got extra time in their exams. Both were able to use a laptop in class and in exams from about age 12 or 13. And they wouldn't have managed without that. I mean, my younger daughter she's so bright, but she's on the first percentile for speed of processing, which means out of her age group, 99 out of 100 are faster than her at speed of processing.
Oh, she must get exhausted.
That's something else that we haven't touched on. It is exhausting. So, these students may well be the ones who come after a day at school and sit there going,
because they deserve to feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, my two used to come home from school and have to have a nap because they were just so exhausted. And I'm not talking just when they first started school. I'm talking, all the way through. And my younger daughter would come home from school and she'd say, "I've got all this homework. I just can't do it. I'm just too tired." Yeah. So it's exhausting.
You understood
Oh
that?
yeah.
What do you think it was about primary school where you were just excelling in this environment, and then you went into the next level up in school, middle school or whatever? What was the change? What? Because you were just excelling in one, and then you became the sort of medium student in another.
Yeah, there's a few things. First of all, it was a selective senior school, so that obviously makes a difference. But also, I think. At primary school, certainly back then, you really only did English and maths. You touched on a few other subjects, but you didn't, it wasn't like it is today where they do a broader curriculum. So it was fairly limited. We stayed in one room. We had the same teacher. There was none of this, I've got to move to this room, I've got to move. Finding my way around the new school, I know it's a challenge for everyone, but boy.
So that structure and calmer environment.
Yeah, definitely. And then all your stuff belonged in your own classroom, and you had to plan ahead to what you needed for each lessons between first thing and break, because you weren't going back to that classroom and have all of it with you. There was no way I was going to manage that.
No, and that's true. For dyslexics, do find that really difficult.
Yeah.
Right place, right time. And you had to do that 6 times a day.
Yeah, definitely. There was no way I was going to do that. And then I mean, I was faced with learning foreign languages for, spelling in English was a challenge. There was just no way, no way I was going to do foreign languages. I mean, I did love science because that was kind of very factual and it just kind of clicked with me. To me, it was obvious. It was what I could see around me. It made sense. So science was my thing. Yeah, maths too, actually. Maths, I came slightly unstuck when I did it at A level. I did get through the A level, but by that point it gets a bit more abstract, and I'm things I can't kind of picture. Yeah, I mean, and I did maths, physics and chemistry for A levels.
Okay.
So chemistry was fine. It was logical. I no problem. Physics, when you get into things like quantum mechanics and stuff that's so abstract, I couldn't picture it. So it just didn't make sense to me. And trying to learn it without it making sense was just really difficult. So, so in terms of moving schools, I think there were a lot of things. I think also you're looking at my daughters as well, and particularly my younger one. At primary school, her reading was excellent, above most of her peers, and the same was true with me. But then you get to senior school and you have to read a lot of stuff and retain that kind of information, and there's a slight change in the way you work. And that was a challenge for me. It took me a long time to work out I need to write notes, and trying to learn all of these information and learn for exams and things like that was really difficult. And of course,
it's interesting because I know with my children, I don't know whether you've noticed with yours, they've become more navigators than learners. They need to know where to navigate to find the information. They have to know some stuff, but they way more about navigation. Yeah. I'm wondering whether that's helped, or does that make it?
I think that's really, really useful. I mean, it's life after all. I mean, you don't need to know the metabolic pathway chart. You just need to know where to find it if you need it, So whatever it happens to be, that's what life is like now. We're so interconnected, and we've got the internet, and we just need to know how to find the information and how to apply it. And actually, I think, slight aside, but I think that's been quite a good thing about the way we've done exams here in the UK in the last couple of years with COVID, with it being more around, and certainly my older daughter, all of her exams for university ended up being online open book exams, which is far more reflective of the real environment and the real world of work than learning masses of information and just regurgitating it. So it would be nice to think that they would manage to put some of that in the future rather than just reverting to what we had.
Yeah, I think they might. I think things have really changed. We've had this for so long. Things are not going back to where they were. They'll just go to a different place, I think.
Yeah, but certainly I think being able to find the information, and it is with dyslexics, it is about reading and retaining. So that's quite a challenge for, I don't know anyone who's got dyslexia who doesn't find that a challenge. And being able to go and look things up without having to actually retain all the information, I think is much better.
So memorizing a piece, they're going to be dyslexic people will be more likely to rely on auditory memory.
It's interesting that you should say that. I have never managed to memorize a piece, ever. So even things I've played from when I was a child, I can't play without the music in front of me. I really can't. I just don't
remember it.
I just don't remember it.
What about your daughter? One of them's got a really good ear, haven't they?
Yeah, she does. So in fact, both of them do. I mean, but neither of them really play much without music, I have to say. My younger daughter does a bit, but that's more in terms of her creativity and songwriting and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But no, they do prefer to have the music,
which is kind of weird, right?
Yeah. But it's a visual cue, you see. Yeah, and I find when I'm playing, I may not look at the music very often, but I still know it's there, and I can if I need to. I've got a piece I'm working on at the moment, and it's got a really awkward page turn, and the only way I can manage it is by trying to learn about 2.5 bars by memory. And I'm struggling, but I think I will get there. But for me, that's a huge challenge, and it's only 2.5 bars.
Well, at least you're patient with yourself. You know why it is, and you're just going to work at it until it happens. So
it's the pig-headed obstinance. That's the winner factor.
I think it's stood you in good stead, that one. I'd be happy with that trait. And you were talking about some of the kind of helpful tools that your children have had. Just generally, I mean, I've heard of glasses, different colours of like rose or amber, sometimes there's a blue even. What other things do you know of, or have you seen your students use, or that are the sorts of things that can help?
Yeah, so I've taught one girl who had coloured glasses. In terms of the three of us, so my daughters and I. My older daughter did use a coloured overlay for reading for a while. I think the thing she found most useful with that was it also had a line on it and like a little window, so you could actually only see a couple of lines of text at a time. So that helped her because it focused her in on that bit. But she is the one with the visual processing issues. She didn't use coloured overlays and things for music, but it can help some. It can also help copying manuscripts onto coloured paper can be useful for some. Also enlarging them into larger script can be quite helpful. Again, you'll get clues from that from people's diagnoses, because if they're looking down those sorts of routes, they're likely to have a diagnosis, and it is one of the things they will investigate as part of that diagnosis. And then they're usually sent away to sort of try lots of different colours, because different colours will suit different people. Yeah, exactly. In terms of other helpful things, my older daughter with the visual processing, she did actually see a behavioural optometrist for quite a while, and they give you lots of different exercises of things to do to get the eyes to focus in different places. It's quite intensive. It's quite, even as a parent, to get them to do it is quite a challenge, but it is helpful if that is something that they have as an issue.
It's got a name, that one of my friends actually is an optometrist, and she specialises in that program, and the one she uses anyway has a name to it. I just can't remember the name at the moment.
Yeah, I mean there are various ones of but Vicky had lots of different like things she had to do, and she had a wobble cushion she had to stand on while she was doing some of it, and looking up and down, and beads on a string that we pulled out and moved up and down, lots of different things.
Children, I know another friend of mine, Harley, this boy is a lawyer now, so he got through a law degree and Spanish degree. He learnt drums. Across all of the left brain and all the rest of it, and she thinks the drums and the trampoline.
Yeah, I've heard of the trampoline being really useful. I can imagine drums would be. I think I would be a disaster on drums. I don't have that kind of coordination, so hats off to people who do that, because the rhythmical integrity of the different things that are going on, as well as the coordination, I just think it's so tricky. It's not for me.
I think even the bass drum's actually behind what you hear is behind what you're doing, so it's like even another complication in there.
Yeah, definitely. But all those sorts of things can definitely help. I mean, there are so many things out there that can help, but we're really at this point, I think, talking more about people who've had diagnoses. So in their assessments, they will have things to follow up on.
If you can use some whole body movement and moving to help with that, cross lateral, that sort of stuff, clearly, and this whole even if you have a wobble board and you're singing the song and doing the movement, or or something like that while you're doing it, it might actually help some children. You just don't
Yeah, definitely. And it'll be great fun anyway.
Yes.
So it's and you want your lessons to be fun. So
That's right.
and they will, whether dyslexic or not, if they're having fun, they're more likely to remember it. So
That's right. Well, they focus in so much, don't they?
Yeah.
When they're having fun and they want to have a target, it's sort of like a game. It sort of gamifies it a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have he's not dyslexic, but I have a boy who's approaching kind of grade 1 level, although we haven't done any exams, and he's one of these who's really, really bright and doesn't work at anything. So piano is something that he kind of has to work at, but he thinks he can't do it because he can't do it without working at it.
Yes.
So, I mean, fortunately his mum's on side and we're working together with him. But so it's sort of, I got him to do just one line of something, hands together, in his lesson yesterday. And he did it first time through. It was only like 3 or 4 bars, virtually perfect, till he got to the last note, which he messed up. And he said, I can't do it. I said, hang on, that was the last note. You've done the rest perfectly. This is the first time you've done hands together for that. Oh, no, I can't do it. And then because he decided he couldn't do it, when we went back and looked at it, of course, he couldn't then do it.
No.
So we persevered with it and broke it down into various things. And I did one hand and he did the other. And we did lots of other different things with it for a while. And we did make a little bit of progress. And then I thought, right, let's do something different. So we did a rhythm activity. And I gave him a really complicated rhythm. And I said, oh, have a look at this. What do you think? To clap. And I use rhythm language. So he was clapping this rhythm. And we did a bar at a time. It was a 4-bar rhythm. And he did 1 bar. And then he started doing the next bar. I said, but I was only asking you to do that. Oh, no, I'm going to do it. So anyway, he sort of took charge and eventually, fairly quickly, but having to try through a few times and do little chunks and then put it all together. So he persevered. And he didn't once say, I can't do this. He just did it. And then I said, okay, that's brilliant. I said, now can you do it again? And I'm going to put the pulse underneath. So I did the pulse and he did the rhythm and no problems. And then I said, okay, can you do the pulse? I'll do the rhythm. And again, no problems. And so much of these things is about bolstering self-esteem and about their attitude to their learning, whether dyslexic or not.
Yes.
And that's the challenge for us as teachers, is when to push and when to say, okay, let's just leave that for a bit.
Yes. Yes. And it's that layering up process, giving them building blocks and then adding a block onto a block onto a block onto a block. And it's amazing what they can achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And whether dyslexic or not, music is such a wonderful skill to have. Whether they're just going to do it for enjoyment or whether you've got the one in however many who's actually going to make a career out of it. It's just such a lovely skill. And as a child, I loved nothing more, no matter what was going on in my life. If I was feeling frustrated or emotional in any sense, I would go to the piano and I would play it out on the piano. And it's just such a release. And to pass that on to other people is just such a privilege.
It's a gift. It's a gift to have. And sometimes you think, we're teaching piano, how important is that in the world? Well, I think it is so important. It really enriches our lives and we enrich the lives of others.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. They've been absolutely fabulous. And it's just so nice to be able, it's just such a special, I was so excited to receive your email, and it's just so special to be able to talk to somebody who's experienced this inside out. And also help raise 2 beautiful daughters as well.
Yeah, I'm so proud of them.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Remember to get your copy of our special download for today's show, 37 Common Traits of Dyslexia and 7 Top Piano Teaching Tips for Dyslexia. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time with another great episode of Piano Teaching Success TV. If you're watching us on YouTube, click those like and subscribe buttons now to make sure you're notified when our next episode is released. And I'd like to thank Paul Myatt, who's been producing today's show and is responsible for all the videos and behind the scenes tech. On behalf of all of us, stay well, see you next time.